From Carnegie Studios in Longmont, Colorado, it's Puppet News. Good evening. I'm Herman Hansen, and I'm a doctor, not a puppet. Or am I?
And I'm Aranda Lurer, and here are this week's stories.
The U.S. economy, boosted by quickening vaccinations and signs of rapid hiring, is headed toward a strong recovery, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said Thursday. But he cautioned that not all will immediately benefit. There are a number of factors that are coming together to support a brighter outlook for the U.S. economy, Powell said during the first virtual spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. Those factors are putting the nation on track to follow a full reopening of the economy fairly soon. Still, Powell said many Americans who are out of work will struggle to find new jobs because some industries will likely be smaller than they were before the pandemic. In other cases, employers are seeking to use technology instead of workers where possible, he said. It's important to remember we're not going back to the same economy, Powell said. This will be a different economy. Powell spoke along with other world economic leaders during the meetings of the two global lending agencies. The roundtable discussion also addressed an emerging trend of wealthier nations recovering much faster from the pandemic than poorer countries, in part because of much faster vaccinations. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General of the World Trade Organization, said that the unequal distribution of vaccines could threaten the global economic recovery. Just 0.1% of vaccines have gone to low-income countries, she said. If we don't do something to change the pace at which the poor countries are getting access to the vaccines, it will take a long time to get herd immunity for the world, Okonjo-Iweala said. That, in turn, could threaten those nations already vaccinated by spreading new variants that could push up case counts and reverse economic progress in wealthier countries. Powell also endorsed the idea of more government investment in the United States, though he specified he wasn't referring to any particular legislation. President Joe Biden earlier this week proposed a $2.3 trillion infrastructure investment package. The Fed chair made an unusual personal admission, noting that he drives by a tent city of homeless people on his way home from Fed headquarters in Washington, D.C. I think we need to really, as a country, and I'm not talking about any particular bill, invest in things that will increase the inclusiveness of the economy and the longer-term potential of it, and particularly invest in people so that they can benefit from the prosperity of our economy, he said. Powell's term as Fed chair will end in 2022. He was asked about whether he would be reappointed by Biden and said, "I don't spend any time thinking about that." Biden, for his part, said Tuesday that he hadn't yet spoken to Powell, his approach contrasting with his predecessor Donald Trump, who often criticized and attacked Powell on Twitter, even though he had elevated him to the Fed chair position. "I want to be real clear that I'm not going to do the kinds of things that had been done in the last administration," Biden said, including telling the Fed what they should and shouldn't do. "So I've been very fastidious about not talking to them, but I do talk to the Secretary of Treasury." Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is Powell's predecessor, and Powell served on the Fed's Board of Governors when she was chair.
Boulder County this week reports an increase in COVID-19 cases, which have been on the rise for the last 2 weeks. The largest increase has been among residents younger than 18 years old. This is not particularly unexpected. We knew there was a trade-off between being in school and keeping our cases low. What we do want to do is keep an eye on these trends, Deputy Director of Boulder County Public Health, Lexi Nolan, said. Despite the rise in cases, no one has died from the virus within the county since early March.
Yosemite National Park, will require advanced reservations for day visitors during the peak summer season to limit the number of visitors and allow social distancing amid the pandemic. Under the new rules, advanced reservations will be required for day-use visitors who enter Yosemite from May 21st to September 30th, the San Jose Mercury News reported. The park superintendent, Cicely Muldoon, said large crowds already have been coming to the park in recent weeks, and there are still cases of COVID-19 spreading in California and other states and countries where visitors are coming from. The basic plan is to protect human health and safety and provide as much access as we can, Muldoon said Thursday during a meeting with government and business leaders of the communities surrounding the park. Rocky Mountain National Park and Glacier National Park are putting in place similar rules, which have been encouraged for decades by environmental groups but resisted by gateway communities whose economies depend heavily on tourism. A similar day-use reservation system was in place last summer. It resulted in Yosemite's visitation rates dropping by half. This summer, the number of visitors allowed will range from 50% to 90%, depending on what levels of COVID-19 are found in Mariposa County on the park's western edge. Currently, with Mariposa in California's orange tier, Yosemite will allow 70% of normal summer visitation, or about 5,760 vehicles a day. We think these numbers will allow people to enjoy the park safely, Muldoon said. Reservations can be made at www.recreation.gov beginning at 8 a.m. on April 21st. Each day-use reservation is valid for one vehicle for 3 days. Vehicles that arrive at park entrances after May 21st without reservations will not be admitted. Due to pandemic concerns, park shuttle buses will not run this summer. Some, but not all, campgrounds in the park will be open, with 585 sites available starting July 1, compared to 247 last year.
Longmont may build a $104 million performing arts, events, and cultural center to host conventions, trade shows, banquets, and conferences. The facility would also attract jobs, tax revenue, and be a key component in other planned downtown developments, City Council members said Tuesday night. The City Council gave no deadline for coming up with a detailed plan for the facility, which must include a breakdown of funding sources. That's money that is going to be very difficult to find, Mayor Brian Bagley told the council. We do need cultural venues for the future for anybody who lives here, for kids who need a place to perform, Councilmember Polly Christensen said. We want to see this.
About 24 monkeys broke out of a southwestern German zoo and spent the day lolling around in the sun near a forest before being recaptured, authorities said Thursday. The Barbary macaques, commonly known as Barbary apes, escaped from the zoo in Liffingen, southwest of Stuttgart, and not far from the Swiss border. It was not entirely clear how they got away, but construction work at the zoo might have been a factor, police said. The primates were spotted roaming the area in a pack, but zoo employees were unable to recapture them and eventually lost track of them. A few hours later, they were spotted, recaptured, and returned to their cages without incident, police said. The animals apparently took advantage of the nice weather and spent the afternoon on the edge of a forest near the zoo, police said. The Barbary macaque is native to the Atlas Mountains of North Africa and has a small but famous presence across the water in Europe in the British territory of Gibraltar.
Denver Mayor Michael Hancock joined Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes Governor Reggie Wasana on Friday at Genesee Park as Denver embarked on what officials hope is a new tradition, donating bison from its herd to tribal nations. The city donated 13 bison to the federally recognized tribe based in Oklahoma, holding a brief ceremony in Golden before the animals were loaded onto trailers for a 10-hour trip to their new home. Wasana said the animals will be used to help provide food for tribal members and breed more bison. The donated bison or buffalo, as many of the tribal members call them, are descendants of herds from Yellowstone National Park. Typically, extra bison are auctioned off, generating some revenue for the city and helping promote genetic diversity for the species.
Local elections in April generally attract few voters, but a small southwest Missouri town hit a new low this week when not one of its 70 residents cast a ballot. Jasper County Clerk Charlie Davis said his office checked several times to confirm that no votes were cast Tuesday in an election to decide if it should annex itself into the Avila Fire Protection District. La Russell voters have to travel 7 miles to Sarkozy to vote, and there apparently was little publicity and few reminders about the election, the Joplin Globe reported. La Russell is about 160 miles south of Kansas City. John Carver, a resident of La Russell for 50 years, said he didn't see any flyers about the election. "I worked until 10 p.m., Carver said. "It was too late to drive to Sarkozy to vote. I work in the field and do whatever, run parts for semis, whatever it takes to keep things going. Plus, hardly anyone knew about the vote." Deborah Burton, La Russell city clerk and wife of Mayor Rick Burton, said her husband was in the hospital until Wednesday after he became ill last week. "I was there with him, so I guess we didn't throw up the flag and let everyone know there was an election, so nobody went," she said. "I don't know what to think." The main ballot question was whether La Russell should annex itself into the Avila Fire Protection District. With no voters, the question failed, Davis said. Burton said she and her husband helped gather signatures in December and January to put the question on the ballot, and everyone said they were all for it and they would vote. Avila Fire Chief Tim Gunter said his district has provided a truck and local volunteers at a small station in La Russell for years. But when Avila voters created a property tax-funded fire district in June 2020, it raised the question of whether he could use Avila tax dollars to protect La Russell. After consulting with the fire district's board and attorneys, Gunter said Wednesday that La Russell will continue to have fire protection until the issue can be put back on the ballot in a future election. The only other issue was 2 seats on the La Russell Board of Trustees, which drew 2 candidates. Davis said the Board of Trustees will have to consult state law to decide how the 2 open seats will be filled. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has acknowledged his country was facing the worst ever situation as he addressed thousands of grassroots members of his ruling party during a major political conference in Pyongyang. Experts say Kim is facing perhaps his toughest moment as he approaches a decade in rule, with North Korea's coronavirus lockdown unleashing further shock on an economy devastated by decades of mismanagement and crippling U.S.-led sanctions over his nuclear weapons program. The North's official Korean Central News Agency said Kim made the comments during an opening speech at a meeting of the Workers' Party cell secretaries on Tuesday. Improving the people's living standards, even in the worst ever situation in which we have to overcome unprecedentedly numerous challenges, depends on the role played by the cells, the grassroots organizations of the party, Kim said. He urged members to carry out the decisions made at a party congress in January, when he vowed to bolster his nuclear deterrent in face of U.S. pressure, and announced a new 5-year national development plan. The Congress came months after Kim, during another political conference, showed unusual candor by acknowledging that his plans to improve the economy weren't succeeding. During Tuesday's speech, Kim also criticized the party's grassroots units for unspecified shortcomings that should be immediately corrected to ensure the healthy and sustainable development of the party. Party cells, which consist of 5 to 30 members, are the smallest units of party authority that oversee the works and lives at factories and other places. The network is an important tool for Workers' Party to perpetuate its power. The previous conference of cell secretaries was held in 2017. The economic setbacks have left Kim with nothing to show for his ambitious diplomacy with former President Donald Trump, which collapsed over disagreements in lifting sanctions for the North's denuclearization steps. The North has so far rejected the Biden administration's overture for talks, saying that Washington must discard its hostile practices first, and dialed up pressure by resuming tests of ballistic missiles last month after a year-long pause.
Colorado could get a new standalone state agency dedicated to early childhood programs if lawmakers act on a recommendation approved Tuesday by a state advisory group. The idea is to consolidate programs and services for children birth to 5 and their families in a single cabinet-level department. Currently, early childhood programs are spread among multiple state agencies, including the Department of Education, the Department of Human Services, the Department of Public Health and Environment, and the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing. While the new agency is not a sure thing since lawmakers must pass legislation to create it, Tuesday's vote was a momentous one for the state's early childhood advocates. A new early childhood agency would elevate the stature of issues affecting Colorado's youngest children and, if all goes as planned, reduce red tape and regulatory conflicts for families.
And that's all we have time for. For Puppet News, I'm Klaus Schäffler.
And I'm Aranda Lurer.
Good night.